Stanley Ann Dunham, the mother of Barack Obama, the 44th President of the United States, was an American anthropologist who specialized in economic anthropology and rural development. Dunham was known as Stanley Dunham through high school, then as Ann Dunham, Ann Obama, Ann Soetoro, Ann Sutoro, and finally as Ann Dunham. Born in Wichita, Kansas, Dunham spent her childhood in California, Oklahoma, Texas and Kansas, her teenage years in Mercer Island, Washington, and most of her adult life in Hawaii and Indonesia. Dunham studied at the East-West Center and at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in Honolulu, where she attained a bachelor's in anthropology or mathematics and master's and Ph.D. in anthropology. Interested in craftsmanship, weaving and the role of women in cottage industries, Dunham's research focused on women's work on the island of Java and blacksmithing in Indonesia. To address the problem of poverty in rural villages, she created microcredit programs while working as a consultant for the United States Agency for International Development. Dunham was also employed by the Ford Foundation in Jakarta and she consulted with the Asian Development Bank in Gujranwala, Pakistan. Towards the latter part of her life, she worked with Bank Rakyat Indonesia, where she helped apply her research to the largest microfinance program in the world. After her son assumed the presidency, interest renewed in Dunham's work, the University of Hawaii held a symposium about her research. An exhibition of Dunham's Indonesian batik textile collection toured the United States. And in December 2009, Duke University Press published Surviving Against the Odds, Village Industry in Indonesia, a book based on Dunham's original 1992 dissertation. Jenny Scott, an author and former New York Times reporter, published a biography about Ann Dunham's life titled A Singular Woman in 2011. Posthumous interest has also led to the creation of the Ann Dunham Sutoro Endowment in the Anthropology Department at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, as well as the Ann Dunham Sutoro Graduate Fellowships, intended to fund students associated with the East-West Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. In an interview, Barack Obama referred to his mother as the dominant figure in my formative years. The values she taught me continue to be my touchstone when it comes to how I go about the world of politics. Early life, Dunham was born in St. Francis Hospital in Wichita, Kansas, the only child of Madeline Lee Payne and Stanley Armour Dunham. She was of predominantly English ancestry, with some German, Swiss, Scottish, Irish, and Welsh ancestry. Wild Bill Hickok is her sixth cousin, 5 times removed. Ancestry.com announced on July 30, 2012, after using a combination of old documents and Y-DNA analysis, that Dunham's mother may have been descended from African John Punch, who was an indentured servant slave in 17th-century colonial Virginia. Her parents were born in Kansas and met in Wichita, where they married on May 5, 1940. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, her father joined the United States Army and her mother worked at a Boeing plant in Wichita. According to Dunham, she was named after her father because he wanted a son, though her relatives doubt this story and her maternal uncle recalled that her mother named Dunham after her favorite actress Bette Davis' character in the film In This Our Life because she thought it sounded sophisticated. As a child and teenager she was known as Stanley. Other children teased her about her name but she used it through high school, apologizing for it each time she introduced herself in a new town. By the time Dunham began attending college, she was known by her middle name, Ann, instead. After World War II, Dunham's family moved from Wichita to California while her father attended the University of California, Berkeley. In 1948, they moved to Ponca City, Oklahoma, and from there to Vernon, Texas, and then to El Dorado, Kansas. In 1955, the family moved to Seattle, Washington, where her father was employed as a furniture salesman and her mother worked as vice president of a bank. They lived in an apartment complex in the Wedgwood neighborhood where she attended Nathan Eckstein Junior High School. In 1956, Dunham's family moved to Mercer Island, an east suburb of Seattle. Dunham's parents wanted their 13-year-old daughter to attend the newly opened Mercer Island High School. At the school, Teachers Val Faubert and Jim Wichterman taught the importance of challenging social norms and questioning authority to the young Dunham, and she took the lessons to heart. She felt she didn't need to date or marry or have children. One classmate remembered her as intellectually way more mature than we were and a little bit ahead of her time, in an off-center way, and a high school friend described her as knowledgeable and progressive. If you were concerned about something going wrong in the world, Stanley would know about it first. We were liberals before we knew what liberals were. Another called her the original feminist. Family life and marriages. On August 21, 1959, Hawaii became the 50th state to be admitted into the Union. Dunham's parents sought business opportunities in the new state, and after graduating from high school in 1960, Dunham and her family moved to Honolulu. Dunham soon enrolled at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. While attending a Russian language class, Dunham met Barack Obama, Sr., the school's first African student. At the age of 23, Obama Sr. had come to Hawaii to pursue his education, leaving behind a pregnant wife and infant son in his hometown of Nyanga unregistered trademark Omakijilo in Kenya. Dunham and Obama Sr. were married on the Hawaiian island of Maui on February 2, 1961, despite parental opposition from both families. Dunham was 3 months pregnant. Obama Sr. eventually informed Dunham about his first marriage in Kenya but claimed he was divorced. Years later, she would discover this was false. Obama Sr.'s first wife, Kezia, later said she had granted her consent for him to marry a second wife, in keeping with Leo customs. On August 4, 1961, at the age of 18, Dunham gave birth to her first child, Barack Obama II. Friends in Washington state recall her visiting with her month-old baby in 1961. She took classes at the University of Washington from September 1961 to June 1962, and lived as a single mother in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle with her son while her husband continued his studies in Hawaii. When Obama Sr. graduated from the University of Hawaii in June 1962, he was offered a scholarship to study in New York City, but declined it, preferring to attend the more prestigious Harvard University. He left for Cambridge, Massachusetts, where he would begin graduate study at Harvard in the fall of 1962. Dunham returned to Honolulu and resumed her undergraduate education at the University of Hawaii with the spring semester in January 1963. During this time, her parents helped her raise the young Obama. Dunham filed for divorce in January 1964, which Obama Sr. did not contest. Obama Sr. received a M.A. in economics from Harvard in 1965, and in 1971, he came to Hawaii and visited his son Barack, then 10 years old. It was the last time he would see his son. In 1982, Obama Sr. was killed in a car accident. It was at the East Center that Dunham met Lolo Soetoro, a Javanese surveyor who had come to Honolulu on September 1962 on an East Center grant to study geography at the University of Hawaii. Sutoro graduated from the University of Hawaii with an M.A. in geography in June 1964. In 1965, Sutoro and Dunham were married in Hawaii, and in 1966, Sutoro returned to Indonesia. After her graduation from the University of Hawaii with a B.A. in anthropology on August 6, 1967, Dunham moved with her 6-year-old son to Jakarta, Indonesia, in October 1967 to rejoin her husband. In Indonesia, Sutoro worked first as a low-paid topographical surveyor for the Indonesian government, and later in the Government Relations Office of Union Oil Company. The family first lived at 16 Kiai Haji Ramli Tengah Street in a newly built neighborhood in the Menteng Dalam administrative village of the Tibet subdistrict in South Jakarta for 2.5 years, with her son attending the nearby Indonesian language Santo Franciscus Assisi Catholic School for 1st, 2nd, and part of 3rd grade. Then in 1970 moved 2 miles north to 22 Taman Amir Hamzah Street in the Matraman Dalam neighborhood in the Pegangsaan administrative village of the Menteng subdistrict in central Jakarta, with her son attending the Indonesian language government-run Basuki School 1. 1.5 miles east in the exclusive Menteng administrative village of the Menteng subdistrict for part of 3rd grade and for 4th grade. On August 15, 1970, Soetoro and Dunham had a daughter, Maya Cassandra Soetoro. In Indonesia, Dunham enriched her son's education with correspondence courses in English, recordings of Mahalia Jackson, and speeches by Martin Luther King Jr. In 1971. She sent the young Obama back to Hawaii to attend Manoa school starting in 5th grade rather than having him stay in Indonesia with her. Madeline Dunham's job at the Bank of Hawaii, where she had worked her way up over a decade from clerk to becoming one of its first 2 female vice presidents in 1970, helped pay the steep tuition, with some assistance from a scholarship. A year later, in August 1972, Dunham and her daughter moved back to Hawaii to rejoin her son and begin graduate study in anthropology at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Dunham's graduate work was supported by an Asia Foundation grant from August 1972 to July 1973 and by an East West Center Technology and Development Institute grant from August 1973 to December 1978. Dunham completed her coursework at the University of Hawaii for a M.A. in anthropology in December 1974, and after having spent 3 years in Hawaii, Dunham, accompanied by her daughter Maya, returned to Indonesia in 1975 to do anthropological field work. Her son chose not to go with them back to Indonesia, preferring to finish high school at Manoa School in Honolulu while living with his grandparents. Lolo Soetoro and Dunham divorced on November 5, 1980. Lolo Soetoro married Erna Kustina in 1980 and had 2 children, a son, Yusufajai Soetoro, and daughter, Rahayu Namada Soetoro. Lolo Soetoro died, age 52, on March 2, 1987, due to liver failure. Dunham was not estranged from either ex-husband and encouraged her children to feel connected to their fathers. Professional life: from January 1968 to December 1969, Dunham taught English and was an assistant director of the Lembaga Persahabatan Indonesia America the Indonesia-America Friendship Institute at 90 Kuamar Street in the Gondangdia administrative village of the Menteng subdistrict in central Jakarta which was subsidized by U.S. government. From January 1970 to August 1972, Dunham taught English and was a department head and a director of the Lembaga Pendidikan dan Pengembangan Manajemen the Institute of Management Education and Development at 9 Menteng Raya Street in the Kebun Sirih administrative village of the Menteng subdistrict in central Jakarta. From 1968 to 1972, Dunham was a co-founder and active member of the Ganesha Volunteers at the National Museum in Jakarta. From 1972 to 1975, Dunham was crafts instructor at the Bishop Museum in Honolulu. Dunham then had a career in rural development, championing women's work and microcredit for the world's poor and worked with leaders from organizations supporting Indonesian human rights, women's rights, and grassroots development. In March 1977, Dunham, under the supervision of agricultural economics Professor Leon A. Mears, developed and taught a short lecture course at the Faculty of Economics of the University of Indonesia in Jakarta for staff members of BPENASA the Indonesian National Development Planning Agency. From June 1977 through September 1978, Dunham carried out research on village industries in the Daerah Istimewa Yogyakarta the Yogyakarta Special Region within Central Java in Indonesia under a student grant from the East West Center. As a weaver herself, Dunham was interested in village industries, and moved to Yogyakarta City, the center of Javanese handicrafts. In May and June 1978, Dunham was a short-term consultant in the Office of the International Labour Organization in Jakarta, writing recommendations on village industries and other non-agricultural enterprises for the Indonesian government's third five-year development plan. From October 1978 to December 1980, Dunham was a rural industries consultant in Central Java on the Indonesian Ministry of Industry's Provincial Development Program, funded by USAID in Jakarta and implemented through Development Alternatives, Incorporated. From January 1981 to November 1984, Dunham was the Program Officer for Women and Employment in the Ford Foundation's Southeast Asia Regional Office in Jakarta. While at the Ford Foundation, she developed a model of microfinance which is now the standard in Indonesia, a country that is a world leader in microcredit systems. Peter Githner, father of Tim Githner, was head of the Foundation's Asia grant-making at that time. From May to November 1986 and from August to November 1987, Dunham was a cottage industries development consultant for the Agricultural Development Bank of Pakistan under the Gujranwala Integrated Rural Development Project. The credit component of the project was implemented in the Gujranwala district of the Punjab province of Pakistan with funding from the Asian Development Bank and Ph.D., with the credit component implemented through Louis Berger International, Incorporated. Dunham worked closely with the Lahore office of the Punjab Small Industries Corporation. From January 1988 to 1995, Dunham was a consultant and research coordinator for Indonesia's oldest bank, Bank Rakyat Indonesia in Jakarta, with her work funded by USAID and the World Bank. In March 1993, Dunham was a research and policy coordinator for Women's World Banking in New York. She helped WWB manage the expert group meeting on women and finance in New York in January 1994, and helped the WWB take prominent roles in the UN's Fourth World Conference on Women held September 4 to Euro 15, 1995 in Beijing, and in the UN regional conferences and NGO forums that preceded it. On August 9, 1992, she was awarded Ph.D. in anthropology from the University of Hawaii, under the supervision of Professor Alice G. Dewey, with a 1,043-page dissertation titled Peasant Blacksmithing in Indonesia, Surviving and Thriving Against All Odds. Anthropologist Michael Dove described the dissertation as a classic, in-depth, on-the-ground anthropological study of a 1,200-year-old industry. According to Dove, Dunham's dissertation challenged popular perceptions regarding economically and politically marginalized groups, and countered the notions that the roots of poverty lie with the poor themselves and that cultural differences are responsible for the gap between less developed countries and the industrialized West. According to Dove, Dunham found that the villages she studied in central Java had many of the same economic needs, beliefs and aspirations as the most capitalist of Westerners. Village craftsmen were keenly interested in profits, she wrote, and entrepreneurship was in plentiful supply in rural Indonesia, having been part of the traditional culture there for a millennium. Based on these observations, Dr. Soetoro concluded that underdevelopment in these communities resulted from a scarcity of capital, the allocation of which was a matter of politics, not culture. Anti-poverty programs that ignored this reality had the potential, perversely, of exacerbating inequality because they would only reinforce the power of elites. As she wrote in her dissertation, many government programs inadvertently foster stratification by channeling resources through village officials, who then used the money to strengthen their own status further. Illness and death. In late 1994, Dunham was living and working in Indonesia. One night, during dinner at a friend's house in Jakarta, she experienced stomach pain. A visit to a local physician led to an initial diagnosis of indigestion. Dunham returned to the United States in early 1995 and was examined at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City and diagnosed with uterine cancer. By this time, the cancer had spread to her ovaries. She moved back to Hawaii to live near her widowed mother and died on November 7, 1995, 22 days short of her 53rd birthday. Following a memorial service at the University of Hawaii, Obama and his sister spread their mother's ashes in the Pacific Ocean at Lanai Lookout on the south side of Oahu. Obama scattered the ashes of his grandmother in the same spot on December 23, 2008, weeks after his election to the presidency. Obama talked about Dunham's death in a 30-second campaign advertisement arguing for healthcare reform. The ad featured a photograph of Dunham holding a young Obama in her arms as Obama talks about her last days worrying about expensive medical bills. The topic also came up in a 2007 speech in Santa Barbara. "I remember my mother. She was 52 years old when she died of ovarian cancer, and you know what she was thinking about in the last months of her life? She wasn't thinking about getting well. She wasn't thinking about coming to terms with her own mortality. She had been diagnosed just as she was transitioning between jobs. And she wasn't sure whether insurance was going to cover the medical expenses because they might consider this a pre-existing condition. I remember just being heartbroken, seeing her struggle through the paperwork and the medical bills and the insurance forms. So, I have seen what it's like when somebody you love is suffering because of a broken healthcare system. And it's wrong. It's not who we are as a people. Dunham's employer-provided health insurance covered most of the costs of her medical treatment, leaving her to pay the deductible and uncovered expenses, which came to several $100s per month. Her employer-provided disability insurance denied her claims for uncovered expenses because the insurance company said her cancer was a pre-existing condition. Posthumous interest. In September 2008, the University of Hawaii at Manoa held a symposium about Dunham. In December 2009, Duke University Press published a version of Dunham's dissertation titled Surviving Against the Odds, Village Industry in Indonesia. The book was revised and edited by Dunham's graduate advisor, Alice G. Dewey, and Nancy I. Cooper. Dunham's daughter, Maya Soetoro Ng, wrote the foreword for the book. In his afterword, Boston University anthropologist Robert W. Hefner describes Dunham's research as prescient, and her legacy as relevant today for anthropology, Indonesian studies, and engaged scholarship. The book was launched at the 2009 annual meeting of the American Anthropological Association in Philadelphia with a special presidential panel on Dunham's work. The 2009 meeting was taped by C-SPAN. In 2009, an exhibition of Dunham's Javanese batik textile collection toured 6 museums in the United States, finishing the tour at the Textile Museum of Washington, D.C. In August. Early in her life, Dunham explored her interest in the textile arts as a weaver, creating wall hangings for her own enjoyment. After moving to Indonesia, she was attracted to the striking textile art of the batik and began to collect a variety of different fabrics. Filmmaker, Vivian Norris, was contacted by the organizers of this touring exhibition in 2009, about a feature documentary she had begun shooting on the life and work with microcredit of Ann Dunham, Obama Mama. This film was completed in May 2014 after 5 years of work, produced by Vigilante V&M Productions in the US, BAFTA award-winning Brian Woods of True Vision Films in the UK with animation by Oscar-winning Breakthrough Films in Poland. The world premiere of the documentary will take place on May 31, 2014 as part of the 40th Annual Seattle International Film Festival, at the Kirkland Performance Hall, not far from where Stanley Ann Dunham grew up on Mercer Island. The link to the festival's information and trailer on the film are here, http://www.sifnetabama Mama, Ann Dunham, A Most Generous Spirit, a feature documentary depicting Dunham's life, is scheduled to begin production in 2010. Charles Burnett, writer and director of Namibia, The Struggle for Liberation will direct the film. Shooting will take place on location in Indonesia, Hawaii and Washington. The production team is currently negotiating for the participation of President Barack Obama. In December 2010 Dunham was awarded the Bintang Jasa Utama, the highest civilian award in Indonesia. A lengthy major biography of Dunham by former New York Times reporter Janie Scott, titled A Singular Woman, was published in 2011. The University of Hawaii Foundation has established the Ann Dunham Sutoro Endowment, which supports a faculty position housed in the anthropology department at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and the Ann Dunham Sutoro Graduate Fellowships, providing funding for students associated with the East Euro-West Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. On January 1, 2012, President Obama and family visited an exhibition of his mother Stanley Ann Dunham's anthropological work on display at the University of Hawaii. Personal beliefs. In his 1995 memoir Dreams from My Father, Barack Obama wrote, "My mother's confidence in needlepoint virtues depended on a faith I didn't possess. In a land, Indonesia, where fatalism remained a necessary tool for enduring hardship. She was a lonely witness for secular humanism, a soldier for New Deal, Peace Corps, position paper liberalism." In his 2006 book The Audacity of Hope Obama wrote, I was not raised in a religious householder. My mother's own experiences only reinforced this inherited skepticism. Her memories of the Christians who populated her youth were not fond and easy. And yet for all her professed secularism, my mother was in many ways the most spiritually awakened person that I've ever known. Religion for her was just one of the many ways and not necessarily the best way that man attempted to control the unknowable and understand the deeper truths about our lives, Obama wrote. Dunham's daughter, Maya Soetoro Ng, when asked later if her mother was an atheist, said, "I wouldn't have called her an atheist. She was an agnostic. She basically gave us all the good books the Bible, the Hindu Upanishads and the Buddhist scripture, the Tao Te Ching and wanted us to recognize that everyone has something beautiful to contribute." Jesus, she felt, was a wonderful example. But she felt that a lot of Christians behaved in un-Christian ways. On the other hand, Maxine Box, Dunham's best friend in high school, said that Dunham touted herself, then as an atheist, and it was something she'd read about and could argue. She was always challenging and arguing and comparing. She was already thinking about things that the rest of us hadn't. In a 2007 speech, Obama contrasted the beliefs of his mother to those of her parents, and commented on her spirituality and skepticism. "My mother, whose parents were non-practicing Baptists and Methodists, was one of the most spiritual souls I ever knew. But she had a healthy skepticism of religion as an institution." Obama also described his own beliefs in relation to the religious upbringing of his mother and father. "My father was from Kenya and a lot of people in his village were Muslim. He didn't practice Islam. Truth is he wasn't very religious. He met my mother. My mother was a Christian from Kansas, and they married and then divorced. I was raised by my mother. So, I've always been a Christian. The only connection I've had to Islam is that my grandfather on my father's side came from that country. But I've never practiced Islam." Publications: Dunham, S. Ann. Civil Rights of Working Indonesian Women. OCLCA 428,080,409. Dunham, S. Ann. The Effects of Industrialization on Women Workers in Indonesia. OCLCA 428,078,083. Dunham, S. Ann. Women's Work in Village Industries on Java. OCLCA 663,711,102. Dunham, S. Ann. Women's Economic Activities in North Coast Fishing Communities, Background for a Proposal from PPA. OCLCA 428,080,414. Dunham, S. Ann. Harriento, Rose. BRI Briefing Booklet, Cupid's Development Impact Survey. Jakarta, Bank Rakyat Indonesia. Dunham, S. Ann. Peasant Blacksmithing in Indonesia Surviving Against All Odds. Honolulu, University of Hawaii at Manoa. OCLCA 608,906,279, 607,863,728 and 221,709,485. Dunham, S. Ann. Liputo, Uliani. Prabantoro, and Itias. Pendka Besi Nusantara Cajun Anthropology Tentang Pandai Besi Traditional D Indonesia, Nusantara Iron Warrior, Anthropological Studies of Traditional Blacksmiths in Indonesia. Bandung, Indonesia, Mizan. ISBN A9789794335345. OCLCA 778,260,082. Dunham, S. Ann, 2009. Dewey, Alice G. Cooper, Nancy I., eds. Surviving Against the Odds: A Village Industry in Indonesia. Foreword by Maya Soetoro Ng. Afterword by Robert W. Hefner. Durham, North Carolina, Duke University Press. ISBN A9780822346876. OCLCA 492,379,459 and 652,066,335. Dunham, S. Ann. Gildile, Anita. Ann Dunham's Ligashaya, a collection of Indonesian batik. Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Islamic Arts Museum Malaysia. ISBN A9789834469672. OCLCA 809731662. Notes. References: Moranis, David. Barack Obama, The Story. New York, Simon & Schuster. ISBN A978-1-4391-6040-4. Mendel, David. Obama, From Promise to Power. New York, Amistad HarperCollins. ISBN A978-0-06-085820-9. Scott, Jenny. A Singular Woman, The Untold Story of Barack Obama's Mother. New York, Riverhead Books. ISBN A978-1-59448-797-2. Further reading, works by or about Ann Dunham in libraries.